And we finally get to talk about quarterback and our Position 360 series. I've got John Chancey here from Rubbing the Rock. John, thanks for being back here with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So we got to start, obviously, with Cade Klubnik here if we're talking quarterback. It was a interesting year for him. I thought he showed some flashes that made me think he could be really good. I came in pretty optimistic. Certainly maybe not as optimistic as I was halfway through that North Carolina game the year prior, that ACC championship, when everyone was just so excited about what he was certainly going to be, an immediate superstar. But nonetheless, I was pretty optimistic, and he had a up and down year. He finished with 2,844 passing yards. Not bad at all. 19 passing touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Just not bad, but he had 10 fumbles, 5 of which were lost. He led all ACC quarterbacks in pass attempts, which is crazy to think about and kind of changes how you look at some of those numbers. But with that, he also only averaged 6.3 yards per pass attempt, which was second worst among ACC players that had 100 or more pass attempts. So there's the context to the passing yards. But I think what everyone's going to remember about his year last year is the weird decisions. You had him pulling and passing on I think it was 3rd and inches against Florida State. Throws it behind the line of scrimmage. They lose about a yard. He had the handoff call versus Miami where he took it away and ran to the side and 4th down and didn't get it. He had the slide that made him short and kind of ended the game against Duke. And then the one that people don't talk about as much because it worked out, right before halftime, you got to throw the ball away against UNC, and he goes for the touchdown. Very, very close call. I at the time live thought he was short. Gets it, so people forget, but 4 different critical situations where he really flubbed it. And then he had the game-winning best drive of the year, the last drive of the year against Kentucky. So how do you put all that together? Quite the interesting, kind of weird season.
I put it together as the adventures of a young quarterback, who clearly has talent. One thing is this past or 2 weeks ago, he went back to the Elite 11 competition where he won as a rising senior in high school. He went back as a counselor, but he ran through some of the drills and some of the videos. You watch it, you're like, okay, there it is. That's what we saw. That's what made us think this guy was going to be the next really great quarterback. And then, like you said, got the ACC championship game against North Carolina. He just looked like he was in command. He knew what he was doing. Well, yeah. I think what we've seen is that, and I made this this comparison not too long ago to some other people I was talking to, that in many ways, Kade is wonderful at handling pressure. He will stand in front of an entire room of people with microphones and cameras and just own everything that happened in the game and be as confident and cool and calm. But when he's not in the Elite 11 and he's got 11 guys on the other side trying to come through to destroy him, and his line may not be blocking for him all that great, and maybe neither of his wide receivers or running backs. He's definitely a guy who had a problem handling the pressure from the defense last year, and he made some really, really head-scratching decisions. I think what we saw as the year went on showed us that he got better. He is a person who he learns from his mistakes, and he's made some doozies, and even the coaches called him out on it. But what we saw as the year went on, things got better. He started making better decisions. And I think a lot of it had to do with his growth. I think a lot of it had to do with the people around him playing better too. His offensive line in that 5-game winning streak, his offensive line was doing a much, much better job with run blocking. It opened up the lanes for both Phil Maffa and Will Shipley. That took a lot of the pressure off of Kade. The line, they were better at run blocking, and that made them more confident. And they got better at pass blocking. They gave more time. I think that Cade Klubnik is a great example of somebody who is the right word just left my mind, but he is together with his team. He's going to grow with his team as they get better. He's going to get better too. And I think that, not only will he improve going into this year, I think if Matt Luke can get the offensive line working together, if Phil Maffa can be what we saw against Notre Dame last year, and that a reliable go-to running back, and then some of these young wide receivers can come in and develop quickly. I think you're going to see that all kind of come together to help Cade really evolve into the quarterback he can potentially be. Is it going to happen right away? I don't know. I think that there's still part of a learning curve for Cade. I don't think there's any going to be a big jump at the beginning of the year, but I think you compare where he finished the year and where he starts versus where he is at the end of 2024, you could see a definable leap.
You know, you mentioned the players around him, the offensive line not blocking, things like that, being a problem. And I think it's interesting that if you look at what happened to DJU back in 2021, the offensive line struggled, the wide receiver struggled, and it seemed to make him a little tepid or tentative or a little scared, so to speak, to pull the trigger. It's almost the opposite problem for Cade is that, you know, on the one hand, I almost don't blame him. You know, he's told to hand it off to Shipley, but how many times did he hand it off to Shipley and Shipley fumbled or the offensive line didn't block? So I kind of get why he wants to take it himself. You know, how many times did the kicker miss an easy kick? So maybe I get why he just takes off right before halftime because he thinks, you know, the kick's going to get missed anyway. So I call it hero ball. Yeah. And it's not right. You're not supposed to do it. You can't disobey the coach specifically telling you have to hand it off. But I do get it. If your teammates let you down enough times, you know, it's like in basketball. Are you going to make the pass when the guy always misses the open three? Or are you just going to try to shoot it? So I think early in the year, maybe not against Georgia per se, but in the first couple of games, we need the teammates to step up. Because if they step up, you get that trust going, especially with the receivers. I think receivers should be better. I think that's huge. Let's talk about what's changed, and then we'll talk about looking forward. So Hunter Helms is out. He's transferred to Rhode Island. Walk on redshirt sophomore Trent Pearman is now going to kind of rise to relevancy in maybe the Hunter Helms role. You would think Christopher Vizzina is the true backup number 2, but he really struggled in the spring game. Second time he struggled in the spring game. He redshirted last year. So I don't know. Your thoughts on the backup, and then we'll talk broadly about the quarterback position moving forward.
Well, I think Pearman definitely put himself into the conversation for backup. And you know, Vizzina, I had to be reminded of this not too long ago. He's still only a redshirt freshman. There's still a lot of time for him. And I would say that what I saw in the spring game this year was better than what I saw last year. So I think he's making progress. I just think it's not, you know, a huge leap or anything in year 2. You know, somebody asked me not too long ago if we're going to see Pearman this year. And my answer was, I didn't necessarily think so unless Cade just does not turn the corner and he's a disaster. You know, I could potentially see Pearman coming in. Pearman could fill the kind of role that we had envisioned for Cade 2 years ago when we weren't necessarily sure that DJ was going to make it through the season. But, you know, then again, I thought about it and guys like Deshaun Watson. All right. I'm please don't say that I'm trying to put Trent Pearman in the same category with Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. But what Deshaun Watson did when he came in at fall camp was he played well enough to convince the coaching staff that he deserved a chance. Trevor Lawrence did the same thing. He came in and he didn't win the starting spot right away. He convinced them that he deserved time in the game, you know, that he should get a series or 2 in the first half to show what he can do. You know, so it's Trent Pearman has his chance this fall to convince the coaching staff that he can be the guy and that you know, if he's that good, that he deserves to have some time. My suspicion is it's going to be more like Cade when he was a freshman. I think that if we get far enough ahead in certain games, you know, they'll give Trent some opportunities, and they may give Vizzina some opportunities too. But I really do think that this is Trent's train to drive. I'm sorry, this is Cade's train to drive, and you know, but I am pretty confident that based on what we saw, that Trent Pearman will more than likely be your primary backup this year with Vizzina as the third stringer.
Yeah, you know, I try to be careful about taking too much stock out of the spring game. You know, it was Banks Pope had the big spring game a year ago. So, you know, there are outliers like that. But a lot of times there is, signal to the noise, and a guy Khalil Barnes had that great spring game and then was awesome. Peter Woods looked really good in his first spring game and was awesome. You see it kind of a lot. I mean, even go a year back, Vizzina struggled and they needed to redshirt him. So I think I'm leaning with you there that Trent Pearman could kind of be the Hunter Helms guy who wasn't supposed to be the backup per se, but he's the next best guy. Remember last year, Paul Tyson, who they brought in a rare transfer portal edition, was supposed to be the backup, but Hunter Helms was better, in part because of injury, but nonetheless. So let's look and towards next year and how much growth do we expect? I'll let you go first, and then I can just kind of add some color commentary. But Cade Klubnik primarily, what do you expect from him this next year?
Well, based on the kind of offense we run, we've never been in a situation where they ask the quarterback to go out there and just sling the ball all over the yard. They have always tried to create a very balanced attack, and if anything, I could see if Matt Luke is successful with really whipping the offensive line into shape, and they're able to run the dirt raid the way Garrett Riley wants to, I could see this being a very ground-based attack this year, especially the start. Again, it all depends on how quickly all the pieces come together. But so as far as yardage goes, I mean, I would say you probably see a modest increase in the amount of yards that we see Cade pass for. I think he could easily be over 3,000 this year. I think the primary area I would look for improvement is a decrease in the turnovers and the mistakes, because he had 9 interceptions, but I don't have the information in front of me. He had several fumbles as well. So
10 fumbles.
10 fumbles.
So towards the top of the entire country.
So that's, I think, where I would expect to see the biggest improvement with Cade is taking care of the ball better. And I think he's going to be better at taking care of the ball. I think he takes some of the pressure off his shoulders, and he's going to make better decisions. He's going to be able to find people. And that's probably the next area I would point out to say that if he really wants to take a jump, he's got to find his vision. He's got to find the guys down the field. Just so many people I've heard talk of this summer about how many times Troy Stellato got deep into the field. Cade just didn't see him, and he did that at the bowl game too. And Troy just, it was
always Stellato.
So
it was always Stellato wide open being ignored. It was always specifically him.
And so that would be the next place is getting the vision and being willing to pull the trigger and launch it downfield and give somebody a chance. Because you're right, GJ was always slow to make up his mind. Cade is not slow to make up his mind. He just doesn't always make the right decision. And he's got to have, when he gets to the point where he's confident in the decisions he's making, he's going to be willing to pull the trigger, be a little bit more of a gunslinger. And especially if some of these guys like TJ Moore or Bryant Wesco can use their speed to get downfield and get open, which is what Clemson's been missing in the wide receiver department. Antonio Williams is good. Tyler Brown is good. But they've been missing the guy who can take the top off the defense. And if one of those guys can be that, or Troy can do that again this year, and Cade can hit them, that turns this into a completely different situation for this offense and for Cade.
Yeah, and Cade is a fairly accurate thrower. DJ would see a guy, he'd have the vision to see him. He might be late, but he'd make the right decision. He'd see him, he'd make the right, and he would just miss bad. Cade, I actually think he's got good speed. Yeah. He's got good accuracy. Sometimes it's bad decisions and sometimes it's bad field vision. And I think that improves with experience. The biggest thing, and we've both talked about it, so we'll kind of wrap on this, is do the teammates step up? Does he then trust them? Does that sort of create that virtuous cycle, or you sort of get that momentum, right? I think Antonio Williams being back is incredibly underrated. It's more fun to talk about TJ Moore and Bryant Wesco, but I think a full season of Antonio Bryant, you got a little glimpse of it when he wasn't 100% in the Gator Bowl, and what a difference it made in that final drive. I think Jake Brenningstool is another guy. He's awesome sometimes, and then he disappears other times. If he's awesome all the time, you're starting to get some pass catchers. So I'll let you have the last word. I did like what you said, Matt Luke, his transformation in the O-line. Maybe that's the most important thing.
Well, it is, and I'm glad you brought up Briningstool because he's going to be another. I mean, he seemed to have just started off slow in Garrett Riley's system, and I'm not sure if he was trying to focus on being a better blocker and therefore wasn't necessarily always in the right place in the passing game. But as terrible as that Miami game was, when he came alive, he had a career night against Miami, and from that point on in the season, he was great. If we have that Jake Briningstool all year this year, that's going to be huge for Kade, because not only is he a guy who in theory could take the top off the defense and go long, but he's also a guy who could be a big safety valve for Kade and give him somewhere to go if he doesn't find the open receivers right away. Hit him over the middle or in the flat somewhere. Jake will be huge. So that was a good point you brought up there.
So I think I classified both of our opinions here as complicated, but maybe cautiously optimistic. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, I'm optimistic. I just don't think it's likely that Cade's going to regress in the completely wrong direction. I do just try to, with a lot of people, I try to talk them down, because I think there are a lot of people who hope Cade's going to explode the same way they hoped DJ would explode in his sophomore season. And I think that we've gotten a little too used to seeing guys like DW and T-Law who came in and just were naturals and greats right away. I think this is going to be a word we've used before, crescendo for Kade. This is going to be a crescendo, but as he and everybody around him gets comfortable, I think he's going to be making steps forward. Just again, when you look at Clemson's schedule, most of the tough games are at the beginning. So it's the first 6 weeks of the season are going to be a little bit of an adventure for Kade and the entire offense.
John, I appreciate you doing this. Thanks for being here. I think everyone enjoyed your insights. If you enjoyed this video, you can help the channel grow in a couple ways. Like the video and leave a comment. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. Also, if you're a pet owner and you live in the upstate, I want to tell you about Ready Vets. Ready Vets offers immediate walk-in care when your pet can't wait. Owned by 2 Clemson alumni, they're open 7 days per week until 10 p.m. They're located in Taylor's, just over 10 miles from downtown Greenville and the Woodruff Road shopping district. Save them in your phone in case you ever need them.